Welcome to podcast episode 388. And today I have a very special guest, Mr. Carolan. He is a Legends X student and he's been absolutely crushing it. I'm super impressed with what he's been putting together in the last couple months through the program. And so I wanted to invite him to speak about how to scale your Airbnb business by building relationships. That's something that Liam specializes in. So Liam is the CEO and founder of Ginger and Gold. It's a cool name. It's a property management company based out of Norwich in England, and that's the Norfolk area, East England. So
You got it.
Liam, welcome to the show. Excited to have you.
I'm excited to be here, Jasper. Thanks for this opportunity, and really excited to be on Get Paid for Your Pad.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's start with your background. Like, how did you get into short-term rentals?
It was one of these things where I was in retail. I was a retail manager of a local department store, and I'd spent years climbing up a sort of corporate ladder, and I just found out that my son was being born, and it's a marvelous time, but it really starts to make you think about the future. And I decided I didn't want him growing up with me working 65, 70 hours a week. So it was just a case of starting to look around at the different ways that people make money in property, mainly. I'd always grown up around, hearing properties the thing to get into. And by joining some of the Facebook groups, I started to hear about serviced accommodation, or what is in America master leasing. And I found somebody who was talking about it quite a lot. She seemed in a similar situation with children, and she had changed her life around. So I decided to get involved in that while still working sort of 65 hours a week. Decided to get involved, get some training, and get started in master leasing and rent to serviced accommodation. And from there, I think within 7 months, I had then my first two units, one managed and one rent to SA, and learned a lot by doing, and learned a lot just on the move. That's really what got me into it. And I would say that it was the want to give my son more time, which really pushed me into changing what I was doing at the time.
Yeah, that's a great reason to get involved in a business. What do you still work? Do you still have your job, or are you
No,
free
unfortunately enough,
man?
it was a case of I continued doing that for about 12, 13 months after I got my first unit. And it just got to a stage, it was actually just before Christmas. And Christmas in retail, as I'm sure anybody listening can relate, is quite full on. I was managing 40 staff at the time. It got to Christmas Eve, and we had just moved house as well that week. And so there was a lot going on. We'd just taken on, I think, our fourth unit. And I just said to my other half, I just said, I think I'm done. I think that's it. I think it was a case where the business wasn't quite ready to support me, but I could see that it was, if I didn't start pumping my time into the business instead of into the job, then one of the two was going to start to fall down. And that's one of the things for me. I like to, whatever I say I'm going to do, I like to do it. So I said to the job, I said, look, I'm ever so sorry, I can't do this anymore. And then I put myself fully into the business, and I'd still say it's the best thing I've ever done. Really, really pleased doing that.
Yeah, yeah. Congrats. That's a big jump. What was this, Christmas 2020 or the year before
Uh,
that?
Christmas 2019. So I've now been full time in the business for a year and a half.
Awesome. How many units are you currently managing?
So we're now at 10 units. It's a mix of master leasing and managed properties. And what I found by doing that, when we took on our first management property, I only had the first rent to serviced accommodation. And it was actually my mentor at the time who turned around and said, "Yeah, come on, say yes, figure it out. Let's do this." And I'm so pleased she sort of pushed me into doing that at the time, because you learn so much more um, from having a management unit than you do just from having a master leasing unit. There's so many more moving parts. And from a business standpoint, the benefit of having a management unit is it cash flows from the start. So that was one major plus point. And at a time where, in the winter months, where the managed units were actually making a good proportion of the profit of the overall business, because of course, when the bookings are lower in the winter, or in the sort of early part of January months, and maybe February, the rent to SA or master leasing ones, just you see a significant drop. The costs are a much bigger proportion of the overall unit, whereas the management ones stay pretty consistent. You're still making money even if that is dropped. So I'm glad that we have grown both consistently, and now our focus is moving, thanks to Legends X, is moving firmly onto management.
Yeah.
Sort of growing.
Yeah, that's the big advantage of the management model, right? You don't have to pay those monthly rents. So if the bookings do go down, then you're still making your percentage of what's coming in, and you're not stuck with these high expenses. Awesome. So let's talk about relationships, because you told me that was for you, that was the major focus on getting your 10 units. It's really building those relationships. And there's a lot of different ways that we can go out and find new properties. But you've really specialized in the relationship building aspect of it. So let's just start with, how does that work? Like, how do you leverage relationships to find new properties, whether it's managements or master leasing?
It's really just throwing yourself out there, and really trying to find the people who you need to make good connections with. So, of course, for us at the start, it was definitely agents. Agents seem to be the best way to get started. So, we actually, instead of just phoning up, we phoned up some, but for most of them, it was actually going into every agent, sort of letting agent, speaking to them, and actually just trying to build rapport with people. And that doesn't just happen over one visit, because they get used to seeing people come in all the time. They can see somebody who's just gone and done a course come in, spouted off what they've been told, and then go off and do it. But if you go in a few times, you take them a coffee, you make sure that you're following up when you say you're going to follow up. And that's one thing for me which has really worked out well, is that when you find local agents, especially because they're looking to build, they're a little bit more flexible than some of what the national ones are. We tend to find the national ones are very much structured as to how they like to do things. But when you go into a local agent, they'll much more likely talk to you, listen to how you can help them. And that's a key thing with any relationship, is that you've got to go in with a aspect of how you can help them. So one of the things that we started doing right from the start is to say, when you go into an agent, is say, we do short-term accommodation. So if you've got anybody who's moving house, we'll help you by offering short-term accommodation. And if you recommend us, we'll make sure your clients get preferential rate, or potentially some commission back to them. And instantly you've disarmed them, because they see that as you're offering them a service. And then you go, by the way, have you got any places that we can do a lease on to take on more properties? We're constantly after more properties. And then that way you're actually, you've come at it at a different angle from most people. Overall, though, there's other ways to do it as well. So quite early on, we started to reach out to local Facebook groups who do short-term rental. We started to reach out to holiday let groups, and even just even property networking groups and stuff like that, and just started putting myself out there that I was interested in meeting these people. And from the early days, we've formed a group here in Norwich and Norfolk where we're now up to 25 hosts within a WhatsApp group of all of the short-term rental operators locally. And if I didn't do that right at the start, I wouldn't have got the level of knowledge that I'd have got as quick as I'd have got. But also, because you're forming good relationships, and the way that I've approached that is saying that many people have got one or two properties, whereas there'll sometimes be big groups of workers where they want to house, anywhere between 10 and 20 staff, which not single person can take. But as a group, we can then offer, multiple properties, and that's beneficial to them. It's beneficial to us, and everybody wins. So I think it's always just a case of reaching out and making sure you're offering the other person, value in that first, and getting out of your comfort zone. Really putting yourself out there.
Yeah, yeah, you touched on a lot of stuff that I want to get into more detail. Who to build relationships with, how do you build relationships with them? But let's start with you mentioned agents. So when you say agents, like who do you mean exactly?
So, letting agents, anybody who's renting out the properties, we actually still have one agent that we go to over and over again. And now it's a case where he knows exactly what we're after. So he now emails us before it even goes on the market, lets us know what the property is going to be. The investor has only just bought the property, and he'll message through going, look, this is the location. Would you be interested in it? He'll let us know the rental rate, and what we always do is make sure that he is looked after as well. So we actually now give him a commission for every single one that he brings us, and actually he's been instrumental in helping the master leasing, the rent to SA side, grow for us, and it's been really, really good to have him as a connection, because if there's ever any problems between us and the landlord, he smooths things over. And it's even got to a stage now where we now rent his mum's property. So he's one of our, or his mum is one of our clients. So
Right.
forming these relationships at the start, that started off with just a walk in off the street, explaining what we do and just offering our services to help them. And talking about the type of people that we serve in the area. So we mentioned some big companies in the area. We've got Aviva, which was formerly Norwich Union, this big insurer. I think they're worldwide. And talking about the local hospital that we accommodate their staff. So as soon as we went in there, the entire aim is to build trust, which is your biggest sort of the biggest aim of any relationship, is to build that trust. And you can do that in a number of ways. One, always follow up on what you say you're going to do. If you say you're going to email them, just email them. It's not rocket science, but so many people don't do what they say they're going to do, and that's a really important thing for that relationship. And also not to take things too personally and emotionally as well. So sometimes there's times where the agent won't come back to you, or things won't go your way. We just say, okay, it's one of those situations, and we move on to the next thing we can affect instead.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the key point is just walking into that office in the first place, right? Because
Yeah.
that's where I see that a lot of our students are struggling the most, because
Yeah.
yeah, it's a bit it's a bit how you say, nerve wracking, I guess, just to walk into an office, talk to some people that you don't know, and start building a relationship. It comes more natural to some people than others. But I think it's that is the most important part, right? Because without that part, like nothing's going to happen. Like you can't really build it. You can't really do this behind the screen, right? I mean, you can send an email, you can send a bomb video, right? Or like a Loom video. That's a bit more personal than just an email. But the power of just meeting somebody in real life, I mean, that's so strong. I mean, it's so much easier to build that connection, to build that relationship in person. So obviously now with COVID, there's it's a bit tricky, because some offices are closed, like people are working from home and stuff like that. But I think as the world is opening up, I saw that in England things are opening up in the next couple months. So right now I think is for anybody who's listening and anybody who wants to grow their business, right now is the time to do it. Because the short-term rental industry is going to boom, is my belief, right? With all the remote workers, with people preferring short-term rentals over hotels, avoiding crowded spaces, people staying for longer, working from different Airbnbs around the world. It's all pointing in the right direction for the short-term rental industry, right? And the economies are going to open up in the next couple of months. So right now is the time to build your plan, get your stuff together, and start getting ready for expansion. So yeah, I think obviously you did a great job, and I think another thing that you mentioned, which is really, really true, is, and we'll dive more into that now, is how do you build that relationship, right? Because I think a lot of people, they approach it the wrong way. They approach it from their perspective. So they are thinking like, hey, I wanna rent this apartment from this person, or I want to manage this person's home, and that's their focus, right? So they come in and they immediately go to what we then call the ask, right? There's two parts of the relationship. Like it's the value you bring, and then there's the ask, the what you're looking for, right? So I love what you were saying, where you said, start by bringing value. I think
Yeah.
that's crucial.
So I think the other thing is, and definitely right about what you're saying, because I still get nervous. I've got to be honest. When we go in places, I think it's good to have a little bit of nerve, but it's that the difference between having confidence and competence. You'd rather have, would you rather have a pilot who's confident or a competent one? Do you know what I mean? Like you'd want somebody who know what they're doing as they go in, and that's one thing which when you go in, not just thinking about what value you can bring them, but try and put yourselves into their mindset. So most agents, the first thing they're worried about is protecting their landlord. They've got a contract with their landlord. That landlord wants to make sure that they get the right tenant, a long lease. They want to make sure the place is looked after. And that's the thing. This agent has got that on them to make sure they find the right person. So they really want to protect their landlord. So depending on how they view you as a threat to that, or as a somebody who can help, sort of meet those obligations, then that's the entire job when you go in there, is to build that trust, and for them to see that you are somebody who is going to look after the place. And some of the tactics and how to do that. First of all, I would always say lean on any previous um, transferable skills. So for me, when I first walked in there, bearing in mind that I didn't have places of my own at the time, I talked about what I did. I'm a previous manager of a department store with 40 staff. That gives you credibility. I was talking to somebody the other day, and she was a letting agent, was her former job, wanting to go into um, you know master leasing and management. And I said, what a great thing you can use as a transferable skills. That's something where you can really appreciate where the other person's coming from, and because you know that, what that agent is looking to protect the landlord for. So yeah, that's definitely a couple of ways. The other thing, talking about local companies and talking about what you do instead of trying to sell it to them all the time. So try and tell them the stories and stuff like that. I always find that if I talk about a real example of my cleaner went in every week, she always drops a text to me saying how clean the place is. Well, what they're actually taking from that, they're taking, oh, they check on their places. But that sounds a lot better than me going, yeah, every week we check on our places, because they've just got to take my word for it. When I'm telling the story about my cleaners who have gone in, if they find any problems, they've texted me, and even show them examples and stuff like that. And also to have the confidence that at any stage, and I've never found anybody wants to do this, but at any stage, I always say to them, I say, look, if you want to talk to my other clients, talk to the other landlords, even come round to one of our other properties, come and see it. These are the photos that it was taken, 2 years ago or whatever. Come and see it today, because it still looks like these pictures, because it's got to service our guests. Our guests are expecting that. So there's a couple of tactics there that you can use to try and build that trust with
Sure.
agent or landlords.
Now, let's dive into the second part. So the first part is, make sure you understand the perspective and the position of the person that you're building a relationship with, so you understand how you can bring value, how to build that trust.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the second part is also important. You also, once you build that trust, then you also have to let the other person know how they can help you, right? Because if you don't let them know, like, then they don't know what you're looking for necessarily, right? So how do you go about that? How do you communicate that?
we try and be really clear about what we're after and what we're not. And this is trial and error. I learned from just saying the first time, I've got to be honest, I wanted any property that they'd give me. Just going in, just going to any property's fine. Well, that's not the case, because you don't want them to waste their time, offering you stuff or talking to landlords, which the properties wouldn't be appropriate. Waste everyone's time. Theirs included. And also, you don't want to end up with a property which isn't right, that you haven't got your due diligence over and that side of things. So it's being really clear about what we're after. So for our particular agent, I always say to him, any apartments we're just not interested in. We that's not something that we do. We do manage a few apartments, but when it comes down to your standard new build apartment in Norwich, it's not something that we'd be after. Any entire houses with their own private entrance is one key thing which we've always gone for, and it's really served us well during COVID, because obviously having your own private entrance has been a really important aspect of any guest stay. So they know how many bedrooms. We tend to like 2 to 5 bedroom properties. Actually, the bigger the better for us, to the larger size. 2 bathrooms, and they're already given a spec of what we really would like. So a lot of the time, they can just do a quick check on any properties that come across their desk. They know the area. So this is a really good tip for anybody listening, is if you go to Google My Maps, you can actually construct your own map on Google My Maps. So this is something which I made about 2 years ago, and we're actually presenting this at an event, a speaking event in Norwich in the next couple of weeks, about the map that we use to map out our preferred investment area. And the preferred investment area, you can actually you can mark out zones around the hospital of where guests are more likely to stay. You can mark out, we're very close here to the Norfolk Broads. We're not ever so far away from the coast. So you can start to map out a 20-minute sort of journey away from these places. And at the areas where they overlap, there's a few key areas where these zones overlap. You can actually go, well, actually, if I have a property there, they could be staying for the hospital. They could be staying to visit the history of the city. And I found that really useful exercise. And just to add to that as well, what we done, we mapped out the top employers in the area, because we want to target business, people working in the area. So we actually mapped out all of the biggest employers in the area and all of the tourist attractions in the area. And all of a sudden, you start to see a real pattern over where these places are. So if you're getting properties close to these places, well, you're going to be better off than if you're not looking at that kind of strategy. So I'd recommend people look at Google My Maps.
Yeah, that's a great tip, and I think that's important for 2 reasons, as you mentioned. Number one is actually to find the best areas for your rentals, but number 2 is that people really appreciate clarity. Right? When somebody wants something from you or is looking for something that you can help with, that person comes across very confident and clear and knows exactly what they're looking for, then people are much more likely to actually help, right? Because somebody just shows up and you get the impression that the person's like kind of all over the place, don't really know what they're looking for, then it's also much harder to help that person. So I think that's a great tip. Let's talk a little bit about Legends X. So you joined about 2 months ago, right? When we started this program, and I've noticed that you've really given it 110%, which is awesome to get you and your business partner, Donatas. Hope I pronounced his name correct. But yeah, what are some of the things that you've learned for the program, and why did you sign up in the first place?
So key reason I signed up in the first place is we're right in that zone where we've got a few properties and we do a bit of this, we do a bit of that. And I could already see that one of the things which I always learned in my previous sort of retail career is that it's just a pattern. All you need to do is find what sells, put it in the right place, and you just repeat that pattern over and over again. So what I realized is that although we're making money and certainly we could go in a number of different directions, I recognized that we can't go in all them directions at the same time. And I needed to get really focused about how I was going to take the company from a few rental properties really to scale up to a proper scalable business that perhaps in the future we could sell, or we could actually hand over and manage it from afar, that sort of thing. So I reached out. I actually got the recommendation from Mark Simpson to join Legends X, and he said that it would be a good fit. And certainly, just reading about it, it was. Obviously had a chat with Eric, and since starting my business, I thought I was really good on stuff in terms of, I thought I had systems down. I thought I knew a couple of key things. Like back in January, I'd even prepared a key documents list where I had all of my analyzation tools in. I had the guest email templates, everything had listed down, but that was all listed in one big file on Google, basically, or on the G Drive. And I now look back at that and go, wow, I had the bare bones, but actually now what I know is huge about how to actually structure that into the 3 different system templates and references and that. And actually, I thought I was clear on my guest avatar. I've been talking about guest avatars on my socials and stuff like that. I thought I'd really clear, but it's funny how when you really dive down and you really get this stuff down onto paper, and we've now got our values actually up behind me on the board and that sort of thing, you start to base some of your decisions on it. So even today, we've had a question come in about we've gone into a further 4 weeks of restricted opening, basically, across here in the UK. And because of that, it affects large groups who are planning to come as 2 or 3 households, which can no longer come. And one of the questions they've said about is, can they refund? Can they move the dates? And straight away we think of our values, and one of which is integrity, making sure that we leave people in a better place than when they found our company. Well, actually, that makes our decision really easy about what to do about moving their dates or offering a refund, because that's part of our core values. And so all of a sudden, it doesn't just become an idea in my head. It's actually something that somebody could follow that system and make decisions based on that. So it's been a lot of I won't lie, there's been a lot of work happening obviously over these 2 months, but I'm really excited. This is probably the most excited I've been since I started my business back 2.5 years ago. So
yeah, you mentioned a couple of things, and one is the core values, right? Mm-hmm. Which is where we really figure out like what's important to us as a person, and what's important to us as a business. And you did an amazing job at that exercise. It does take a little bit of time to figure it out, but you've now printed it out. I see it behind you. And you're right. When you know exactly what your values are and the values of your company, then you can literally use that as a Northern Star, right? Yeah. You can use it as a guideline for any decision you make in your business. Plus, other people, anybody you work with, like whether it's employees or partners or landlords, when you are really clear on those values, those people will then also pick up on that, right? And one thing I learned over the years doing this podcast is by interviewing so many people, is that like the majority of people want to do business with people that share their values, that they can align with in terms of like what's important to them, right? So that's why I really believe in these core values, and it's awesome to hear that you're already starting to see that's being used as a guideline to making decisions in your business. The second thing that you mentioned is the playbook, right? Mm-hmm. That's been a game changer for myself and Eric, is actually having a centralized system where we house all of our documentations. And that's one of the main reasons why we started this program, is because we realized like that's really the business. Like when people think about a business, they think about like the idea and like, like the customers and making money and all of that stuff, which obviously is also important. But at the end of the day, like you can't really grow a business if you don't have your processes in place, and if you don't have them documented in a way that you can also, it's easy for you to find it, but it's also easy for new team members that you bring into the business to find all the information that they're looking for. Plus, it's much easier to sell a company in the future. That's something that you mentioned that you wanted to do. If you go to a potential acquirer and you show them that playbook and you say, look, this is our playbook and this has everything we do in the business, it's in here.
Yeah.
That makes it so much more attractive for them to buy it, because otherwise if you buy a company and people are operating from their brain, from their memory, how are you going to operate that business without those people? Right. And then you have to build, you literally have to go in, buy the company, and you have to hold on to all of the employees and the owner of the business first, to then take all the information out of their heads and put it into your own system, which is a massive, massive undertaking. And I think that's a big roadblock for potential acquirers to buy a business, is not having those documentations in place, right?
100%. 100%. And actually, you just reminded me on that. That was one of the other reasons I got involved in it. Was I was lucky enough to be on a 24-hour clubhouse room back in February with Julie George, and she obviously talked about her business that she had systemized and sold for $1 million, and actually that was a bit of a sort of an eye opener for me, because I'd never considered at some stage I might want to sell my business. And of course, you can't sell yourself as part of the business. You've got to have this stuff down, sort of all these processes down, and actually documenting. Even now, whenever we send an email, my first thought is, can I save this email as a template and use this more than once? You always, everything you want to do, you want to try and create net time, no extra time, by copying that and just putting it into that playbook, or to utilize it in some way. And I found it really, really eye-opening. The playbook, as well as the oaths to the clients. We went and done a viewing in North Norfolk this week, and one of the questions we always get asked is, if we take more properties on and give them to you, will you give us a discount on your management fee? And what I've always said to people is that why would we give a discount when we're looking to fill all the houses equally? If we make more on somebody else's house, why would you want us to lower our fee when we're doing a really good job to make sure your property's filled? That's our incentive to do it. And instead of doing that, I actually used one of our oaths that we've got, which is, if we don't hit our predicted income from that property, we'll half the price of our management fee for that 1 month, because our values is integrity, and we do what we say we're going to do. So, and straight away that knocked out the question about discount, and they left with good impressions. So
Yeah. Host oath, the guest oath, is something that we cover in one of the first weeks of Legends X. It's essentially a brand promise, right? And it really creates. It's a bold move to throw out guarantees, and it just it immediately establishes yourself as a professional who's confident in what they're doing, right? So, I mean, we can talk about this forever, but we gotta wrap up this podcast. But before I let you go, let the listeners know if they ever visit England, and I'm sure people will be visiting England because it's opening up soon, and everyone's looking forward to traveling. So let people tell us a little bit about your area, why people should visit, and how they can find your properties.
Okay, so we're in an idyllic city right in the east of England. There's a lot of history here in the middle of Norfolk, and actually we're about 20 minutes away from the world famous Norfolk Broads, where you can hire boats out, you can go kayaking or canoeing. And we're about 30 minutes away from the coast on both sides, some of the most beautiful award-winning beaches within the UK. So if you do plan to visit anywhere in England, just come and see Norwich, certainly. If you do want to reach out and see our properties in particular, just go to www.gingergoldlimited, so it's ginger, the colour gold, ltd.co.uk. And you'll get to see some 3D tours on there of some of our places. There's a blog that we update regularly, which is all the places that myself and my family like to visit. So there's lots to see and do here.
gingergoldltd.co.uk is the place where you want to go if you're planning to visit England, or if you want to get in touch with Liam. So Liam, thank you so much for joining, and again, congratulations on everything you're doing within Legends X. It's been an absolute pleasure working with you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this podcast.
All right. And to the listeners, thank you for listening. And we'll be back next week. So see you then.